And welcome in, everybody. This is Pucks from the Pine Tree Pod. Happy Tuesday evening to everybody out there, or Wednesday morning if you happen to be listening on your way to work tomorrow morning. I appreciate y'all being here. A little bit of news from today. Of course, wrapping up from last night's action, Stanley Cup final. Florida, of course, over the Edmonton Oilers in that seventh game. I have no doubt those players from Florida have not stopped partying. I'm sure they haven't slept. Sure, they're still drinking beers and champagne out of that cup, and good for them. The NHL Public Relations did announce today that that Game 7 did draw 16.3 million viewers. That's across North America. Second most watched game since really 2004 when they started keeping the data. So a lot of casual fans watching that one too. Awesome to see. Throughout the NHL final, it did average an 8.8 million viewers across North America as well, which was the most watched NHL Stanley Cup final since 2013, which of course was Chicago, Boston, two original sixes, six-game series there, three overtime games, wildly exciting. One of the best cup finals I've ever seen. Very, very memorable one. So good on the NHL. Hopefully that means good things for the league. Hopefully that means the sport's growing in popularity and interest. So good on them. Couple of quick trades to talk about today, guys, both involving Detroit. Detroit getting young forward Jesse Kiskinen, 18-year-old Finnish player, and a second round draft pick from Nashville, with Nashville receiving defenseman Andrew Gibson, a 19-year-old playing in the OHL this past season. So, kind of a minor trade there. From there, Detroit flips that second round pick to San Jose, along with 28-year-old defenseman Jake Wallman. And Detroit gets back the good old future considerations. So, really, all this means, guys, is this was a salary dump for Detroit. Um, Wallman had 2 years left at 3.4 per, and clearly they have some plans to use that money because it's a weird one. Because Wallman was a decent player there, part of their rotation in the back end, and of course San Jose has all the money in the world to spend, so kind of a good partnership there in that trade. With this, the Sharks now have five of the first 60 picks in this coming draft, starting on Friday night. So they're going to have just a great time of it, I'm sure. Of course, they're sitting on that number one draft pick as well. A couple of signings to talk about today as well. Winnipeg re-signing defenseman Dylan DeMello, 31-year-old, 4-year contract, 4.9 million per season. He was set to become a UFA through 82 games. He did have 3 goals for 28 assists and 31 total points. I think there would have been a lot of interest in DeMello in the market. Good, solid veteran defenseman. Winnipeg really showed out this year defensively, so no surprise they want to get him back. And good payday for him. Colorado also re-signing center Casey Middlestad, 25 years old. They picked him up from Buffalo at the trade deadline, lock him into a 4-year, $4.9 million contract. I'm sorry, 3-year, $5.7 million contract. If I could just read my own writing, that'd be lovely, right? Um, but through 80 games last year, through between the two teams, 18 goals for 39 points, or 39 assists and 57 points. My goodness, having a hard time reading, folks. So, a couple of good re-signings. Again, players that would have drawn some interest in the free agent market, and those two teams locking them up. Craig Morgan reporting yesterday that out of Arizona, owner of the Arizona Coyotes, or should I say the owner of the rights to the Arizona Coyotes, Alex Morello, is walking away from those ownership rights for the Coyotes. Uh, we all know a couple of days ago, the land deal that he was looking to pick up with an auction was delayed, and it looks like it was just the last straw for him and for that group. Overall, this is good news for the NHL. It may not be great news for Arizona, but it is good news for the NHL. He was not a great owner. I would say less than ideal in terms of his track record. Another setback, though, for hockey in the desert. And if it's going to happen again, it's going to have to happen with a new ownership group. I'm cheering for it. I hope the right person, the right group can be found because it's a great area. Um, the sport is growing there. You've got players like Austin Matthews who are from that area. I think hockey can work there with the right set, with the right group, with the right arena. So we will see what happens there. But Moreno out, gone. Wanted to talk a little bit more about the Linus Allmark trade and some more thoughts that I have on this trade from last night. Last night there was a lot of news. You had the game seven, and so I didn't really feel like I had a chance to really kind of express everything I wanted to express last night about the trade. Um, I'm gonna miss Linus. I'm gonna miss him on this club. I love that goalie tandem. You knew it wasn't gonna last forever, but I am sad to see him go. A lot of chatter today about the return, and I did talk about it a little bit last night. Not the return that everybody wanted. Part of this, though, was that Allmark never got an extension in place with Ottawa. So he's riding on that $1 million or 1 year, $5 million bit that he has left. So that's not a lot of security for Ottawa. That's definitely going to hurt the return you're going to get back if you're Boston. So this really is kind of a 1 year vetting process for both Linus and for Ottawa. See if it works out. Hey, see if Linus and his family like living in Ottawa. I've heard good things about the city, so I'm sure that piece will be a good fit. But you have to consider your family in that too if you're Allmark, and see how good the team is. I mean, they have struggled for a while. They've got, I think, a good young nucleus. Linus could be the answer there. Um, so, again, I think the return was fine. Like I said last night, um, I don't mind the deal. I was a little surprised that they couldn't shed more salary. They do get Ottawa to keep at 25% off Corpusala's contract, but you just kind of thought maybe they could get a little bit more cap flexibility through that deal. Um, and I think that just goes right back to Allmark not having any more years on his contract outside that one. Not much security for Ottawa, so the trade off is you're taking more of the salary um, than maybe you would want to otherwise. If the Bruins did decide to just cut ties with Corpusalo, trade for him, and then go through a buyout process, there is a process in place that could work potentially. Scott McLaughlin reporting this from Cap Friendly that if the Bruins were to buy him out, for this year there'd be a cap hit of 250,000 that would grow to 625,000 next year, 1.375 in 26-27, and then it would go to 1.75 in 27-28, and then $1 million per year from 28 to 2032. So while the per year numbers don't really, resonate when your your salary cap is right now 88 million, probably going to be by 2032, could very easily be over 100 million, but that's a good long time to be paying somebody to not be here. So you do kind of want to avoid it, but it does show there is potentially a roadmap where if it just doesn't work out, just cut ties with him and take the dead cap hit. You know, we'll see. One note that Joe Haggerty mentioned in an article is that when you do the math, he only represents about 3.4% of the cap hit. So I know people don't like Corpusala's numbers. They don't like the 3 million they have to pay him to be a backup, but 3.4%, that's what everybody's up in arms about. If you can get, you know, goalie Bob to work with him a little bit, get him to that, good, kind of grade A, good solid backup goaltender, you're fine. You were gonna go out and get a backup goalie anyway. Sure, you're probably paying Corpusala a little bit more than you would want to for a typical backup, but probably not much more. What are you gonna go get a backup veteran goalie for? 2 million, 2.5, 2.2? Like, you're gonna be right around that anyway. So, overall, again, I think it's fine. I think the deal's fine. The first round pick, I'm excited about that. Gives me something to be excited about for Friday night when the draft starts. And I do like the young physical forward that they got. A little bit of grit, something the team desperately, desperately needs, and something that they identified. But they want more speed. They want more physicality. This kid will bring the physicality. I didn't talk about it last night, but we're gonna get into some free agency stuff here in a bit, that could mean that Pat Maroon's not back. Guy they picked up at the deadline wasn't fully healthy. Again, he's kind of on the back nine of his career. This kid may very well be taking Patty Maroon's place. So we'll see. But all in all, like I said, I'm going to miss Linus. I'm really not excited about him being traded in division. You make Ottawa better. He was just a fun guy to watch in the crease. He was always very candid with the media and during interview times. You always appreciated that. And of course, we're losing the goalie hug. Oh, that was just such a fun part. I mean, you're already so excited that the Bruins won the game. Then you see those guys, you know, get that big goalie hug. It became a thing, right? It became a very special thing here in Boston, here in New England, and definitely gonna miss that. I'm hoping if I can get one good thing to happen next year, the first time that Boston Ottawa plays, I would love to see those two goalies, whether it be before the game or after the game, do the goalie hug. Just do it, especially if you're in Boston. Not maybe not so much in Ottawa, but the first game back at the Garden. Man, if that could happen, that'd be all right. That'd be a good send off, a good way to end it. And yeah, we'll see. But just want to throw in a couple more thoughts on the deal and on Linus. He gave a very nice kind of farewell statement today on social media. If you haven't read it, go check it out. It's all over the socials. When you start to look at this team though now for the next season, this really means that the identity of this team is going to shift. It has to shift now because last year we all know what was the strength, what was the identity of this team. It was goaltending. It was that tandem in net. Now Swayman is ready to go. Grade A, might be a top five goaltender in this league. I think he has that potential. And between what you're going to get with Corpusello and Bussy as backups, they're fine. It's going to be a good tandem, a good group, and you still have goalie Bob coaching them up, but obviously not going to be as strong as what you had last year. So you're going to have to kind of create a little bit of a new identity. What's going to be the focal point? What's going to really be the strength of this team in 24-25? Um, and that's really going to be answered, I think, here over the next couple weeks. July 1st is coming. The Bruins do have, according to Cap Friendly, about 21.5 million or like right around 21.6 million. That number could actually be closer to 23. Again, that was just a projection from Cap Friendly, but they've got some money to spend and they have some pretty big holes to fill as well. We are pretty much assuming that Jake DeBrusk is out the door. I don't think he's coming back. I don't think he's re-signing. I think Sweeney has, uh, said what he said kind of at the end of year presser, and I think he's as good as gone. So I really look at this team as you need probably two top six forwards. You know, you need a center. You're going to need to replace DeBrusk. So that's two. And you definitely want to go out and get yourself a good, solid right shot defenseman. So that's three. You got to have other smaller holes to fill. You want some flexibility as you go into the season. You don't want to just go nuts on day one and spend that whole 22 million or whatever you have, right? But you do have the money to go out and be aggressive, be assertive, and get some of those top guys or those top targets that you need. Um, you've got your all-world goal scorer in Pasternak. You have Marshy as your captain. You've got McAvoy, blue chip D guy. You've got your number one goaltender. So you've got a lot of the big pieces in place. Now you have to flesh it out. This list here, this top 10 list, this is more of my own personal wish list. And these are some of the guys I'm hoping the Bruins will target. These are some names that have certainly come up already and are being talked about wildly, throughout, any other, Boston podcast or any of the Boston, radio shows or writers, or a lot of these names are being mentioned, but kind of want to go through my list here as well. Number one, no surprise here, Elias Lindholm, centerman from Vancouver, 29 years old. He did play 75 games last year between Calgary and Vancouver, 15 goals, 29 assists, 44 points. The center position, there's a few centers out there. There's no Patrice Bergerons on the market. There's no, Sidney Crosby's. on the market. I guess you could put Steven Stamkos as that guy that's maybe that real like big time, big name guy. I don't have him on my list. I think he ends up staying in Tampa. Would I love to see him in a Boston Bruins uniform? I sure would. But I do think that Lindholm, in terms of like realistic targets for Boston, he's it. They were high on him last year, tried to get him at the deadline, and I think he's a great fit. Again, he may not be a bona fide number one center, but he's probably like a very solid number two center at the very worst. You put him with Coyle, with Saka, you got to have Matty Poitras coming back. You really elevate that room and really fill a need that you clearly showed out, like we talked about earlier in that Florida series. So I think you might have to overpay him a little bit, and that contract may not look good first year or two. But as the salary cap starts to creep up, that contract becomes a value. Jake Gensel, number two on our list. Carolina Hurricane was traded from Pittsburgh this past season. Probably is the best pure goal scorer on the market. A little bit of chatter about him today that Carolina hasn't given up on trying to re-sign him, even though they had kind of put it out there that his rights were up for grabs in a trade. Nobody bid on that. 29 years old, through the 67 games, he had 30 goals for 47 assists and 77 points. So good, solid year. I had played again with Crosby in Pittsburgh all those years up until halfway through last year. Uh, I don't think the Bruins get him. I'd love to see them get him. I think there's just going to be so many teams going after him, a lot of competition, a little bit of chat about the LA Kings. Wouldn't be shocked if something happened there. Uh, Number three on our list, Adam Henrique, forward for Edmonton, um, made the move from Anaheim at the deadline last year. 34 years old. He can play forward. He can play center. What I like about Henrique is he can play a little bit up and down your lineup. He's like a little bit better goal scorer version of like a Dan Heinen, where he's a little bit of a jackknife, can do a little bit of everything. Um, the Bruins have been rumored to be in on him at the deadline too last year, but 82 games last year, 24 goals, 27 assists, 51 points. So good, solid season. Yes, he's a little bit of a veteran, but I think because of his age, you can get him on a shorter term, maybe a 2-year type of deal, and you won't have to overpay to get a guy like him, and I think he would really fit in well to that middle six. Would absolutely, fill the gap that Jake DeBrusk is most likely gonna leave, behind. One here that might be a real possibility for the Bruins, number 4, Chandler Stevenson from Vegas. 30 years old, played 75 games last year, had 16 goals, 35 assists, and 51 points. Vegas has a little bit of cap crises to deal with, and there's a lot of chatter that they're going to lose some guys. They just are. They're not going to have the money to keep everybody. Stevenson again, he can play center for you. He can play forward. Again, not a bona fide first line center. More of a middle, second, third line center. Uh, but I think would be another good get for this Bruins team. Has that winning pedigree, has a cup on his resume, and especially if you don't get a Lindholm, I think Stevenson could be a lovely fit in Boston. Number 5, and this is another guy I don't think the Bruins get, but I've always liked this kid's game, a little bit younger, Dakota Joshua from Vancouver, 28 years old, uh, kind of really elevated his game this year, but 63 games, had 18 goals, 14 assists, 32 points. Um, he's on the uptick. He's ascending in his game, and I think there's just a lot of untapped talent there. I do think there'll be a lot of teams in on him. I'm sure Vancouver's still trying to find a way to lock him up as well. He's due for a nice little pay raise. But he'd be another one of those guys. Could be an easy fill in if Jake DeBrus does leave, and somebody again that'd be higher up on my list for forwards. Uh, Moving to number 6, we're gonna get into kind of defensemen now. Matt Roy, LA King. I've always liked this guy's game. He's always been one of my favorite uh, kind of defensemen, non-Boston Bruins defensemen. I've had him in my fantasy hockey league the past couple of years, so maybe a little bias there. But 29 years old, played 81 games last year out in LA, 5 goals, 20 assists for 25 points. Just a good all-around defenseman, right shot defenseman, which is something Boston needs. Isn't the most physical player, but can do a little bit of everything for you. And I think he would match up well, first pairing, second pairing, third pairing. I think as much as coach likes to move, matchups and lines around, I think he'd be a really good fit for what Monty and the group likes to do. A name that has been talked about a ton, number 7 on my list, Brett Pesci, out of Carolina, another right shot D. A lot of names in on him. 29 years old. He did play 70 games this year, 3 goals, 10 assists for 13 points. I think, again, be another nice fit. Um, like I said, a lot of teams in on him. We'll see what happens there. Uh, Nikita Zadorov, Vancouver, another player traded from Calgary to Vancouver at the deadline. Uh, Physical guy, bigger defenseman, 29 years old. Uh, did play a total of 75 games last year, had 6 goals, 14 assists, and 20 points. If you want physicality, you want just kind of a brute out there, bigger guy, this is a guy you go get. Um, he's a little bit high risk, high reward, does take some stupid penalties. He's like one of those guys you just have to kind of live with the good and the bad with him. I think as he's gotten older, he's matured a little bit, but that's kind of always been the knock on him is he just kind of takes dumb penalties at the wrong time, but also gives you that beef, that physicality that once again the Bruins desperately need. Number 9, defenseman Chris Tanev. Again, another player I don't think Boston gets, but one I would absolutely love seeing us both be next year. Uh, was traded to Dallas, was part of their run this year. Another Calgary defenseman traded away this year. A little bit older, 34 years old, but did play 75 games this year. 2 goals, 17 assists, 19 points. And when he got to Dallas, he really just calmed everything down for them. And really all their pairings on defense really set in well. And you saw how aggressive he was in the playoffs. He was a really good get for Dallas. I think they're still trying to find a way to lock him up. This is really probably going to be Tanev's last big payday at his age, and the fact he had such a good playoff run. I mean, if I'm him, unless I want to just make sure I get the right fit, I just go to the highest bidder, and that's probably not going to be Boston. But again, I think would be a player that would fit in well just about any place. I saw how well he played in Calgary, how valuable he was there. Goes to a completely different system, and right away in Dallas, just slid right in, became such a great, kind of spark plug for them. Uh, He'd be wonderful to see here, but high on my list. And number 10, Brendan Dillon, 33 years old, did play 77 games, had 8 goals, 12 assists for uh, 20 points. Now, Dillon is a left shot defenseman, which isn't as big of a need for this team. But Dillon's another good all around solid defenseman, has a little scoring in his game. Um, would be just another player that I consider. I think another player too that will be on a lot of people's lists. I think there'll be probably a nice little bidding war for him. So certainly not expecting the bees to grab him. When you look at a top 10 list like this, you want to be a really good baseball hitter. If I could be hitting 300, man, if I can get 3 of these guys off this 10, I'm feeling really, really excited about next year. Give me a little bit of Lindholm. Give me a little, Matt Roy. Give me a Henrique. I'm feeling all right. Feeling all right about this club. Um, but it all starts July 1st. You're going to see some more trades happen. We're obviously have the draft starting Friday night, so a lot more to come. Can't wait to see what the bees do. Can't wait to see how the league starts to kind of reshape themselves and these teams start to reshape themselves. With the cap going up this year, there's going to be a lot of GMs spending a lot of money and a lot of players cashing in. So good on them. I can't wait for it. But please, leave those comments below. Let me know, players that you'd like to see Boston go out and get. Um, Once again, if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much for your support, guys. It means a lot to me. And we will talk to you all again soon.